Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Well, for various reasons, Rebel News head office is in Toronto, Ontario. And around that, our office staff has grown. Ontario is the largest province in terms of population. It's where the federal capital is. It's where the country's biggest city is. You know the reasons. That said, Alberta is also a laboratory of ideas in this country. It's a place where conservatism sometimes finds deep roots. It's also a place where populism bubbles up. And recently, bizarrely in my mind, it's been a place where freedom has been in the deepest retreat. The province's motto in Latin means strong and free, and yet it has the most punitive lockdowns in the country. And so I'm delighted to report that in the last few weeks, we have increased the size of our Alberta team. Under the leadership of Sheila Gunn Reid, our chief reporter and our Alberta bureau chief, we've added to that a reporter in Edmonton named Daniel Day, working for us on a half-time basis, a reporter in Calgary named Adam Sos, who's just done outstanding work, even in the short weeks he's been with us, and our newest recruit, who coincidentally happens to be named Kian Simone. We call him K2 to distinguish him from Kian Bexley. So we have a 4-person team in Alberta, and just in the nick of time, the province is overflowing with news. And now we go to our Alberta bureau chief, Sheila Gunn Reid, who is on the scene in central Alberta with some breaking news. Sheila, great to see you again.
Hey, Ezra, thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I'm here with some breaking news. I'm actually at the ranch of Ty Northcott and the Northcott family and Northcott Rodeo Inc. because he has just received, he and his wife and the company have received summonses to appear in court to answer to the charge of breaking the Public Health Act for holding their protest rodeo rally, would be 2 weekends ago now in Bowden.
So thank you for breaking that news. You're on the scene. I know you were at that rodeo. It certainly felt free. It felt very Albertan, and it felt rural. Obviously, those things, you know, they're self-evident. But the rural part is interesting because rural Albertans, they're physically spread out. They're often outdoors work in a rodeo and a ranch and a farm and oil rigs, whatnot. So they're not densely packed urban dwellers living, you know, in stuffy high-rises, working in stuffy skyscrapers. The public health dynamics of people living in the country is very different from those living in the city. And yet the decisions in Alberta, and indeed in most Western jurisdictions, are made in capitals. And some grand public health vizier sends out an order, and everyone must follow it regardless of the local circumstance. That's the first thing that strikes me, is the epidemiological differences between rural Alberta and, you know, the bunkers where these health experts, so-called, are in. The second is the politics. There's no one more free and independent than a cowboy. I mean, they are, you know, the idea of a cowboy and the government, that's like oil and water. So the idea that some city slicker bureaucrat like, I don't know, Dina Hinshaw, the health officer in Alberta, is going to issue some, you know, decree, and suddenly a cowboy is not going to ride a horse, that just sounds laughable to me. Politically, it sounds like a death wish for any Conservative Party that depends on rural parts. What do you make of what I've just said, that what you have here is an urban leftist authoritarian police state ideology being imposed on faraway rural independent-minded people? And if I was a local UCP, United Conservative Party MLA, I would be deeply worried for my future.
I think you're exactly right. A lot of the dynamic and as a lifelong rural person, I feel this deeply every single day. It's very much the same dynamic that Western Canada has with Ottawa, where these far off people with different issues than us are making these blanket decisions to control our lives when they don't know what it's like where we are. And we have a different set of values. And that's the same dynamic at play right now with a bunch of cubicle dwelling Edmonton decision makers making decisions for cowboys and ranch hands and people who work on drilling rigs. It just doesn't make any sense. And that's why Ty Northcott held his rodeo. It was a rally to show the government that we still think it's fine to do these sorts of things outside. If you can be in a Walmart, you can go to a rodeo. And so, you've seen it in Mirror, in Bashaw, in Bowden. The community has come out in full force to support these guys as they stand up to the decision makers in Edmonton. Their communities support them. Now, will their MLAs support them? That remains to be seen. However, those MLAs a few weeks ago who signed that anti-lockdown letter, I think it's about a dozen and a half UCP MLAs signed a letter basically saying they no longer support these ongoing lockdowns. Those were largely rural MLAs. So are we seeing sort of that unraveling of the party back to the old PCs that held on to Edmonton and Calgary, and then the Wild Rose that represented the rural parts of Alberta? I don't know, but it seems as though the broad coalition of the UCP is starting to come apart at the seams.
Yeah, it's incredible to me. I mean, the Western Standard magazine, an online publication that actually picked up the reins from the old print magazine that I used to publish more than a decade ago, they published a scoop a week or so ago where they say that Jason Kenney told his caucus MLAs that he wants a new party base referring to, the most passionate, the most partisan loyalists. The UCP base would include rock-ribbed conservatives, rural people, Calgarians kind of thing. Their growth area would be downtown fancy pants, Edmontonians, things like that. So you generally don't do well replacing your base. I've heard of parties winning with just their base. I've never heard of parties winning without their base. And it's so odd because Jason Kenney himself was the one who laboriously combined the Progressive Conservatives and the Wild Rose Party. So it's very odd that he would be so cavalier about it, considering it took him years to put it together.
Yeah, it's very weird to hear Jason Kenney say that he wants a new base. Who's he going to replace them with? NDPers, dyed-in-the-wool NDPers, university students? I mean, the Liberal Party does not exist in Alberta. So you have to draw from the NDP well of public sector unionists, students, and academics. How does Jason Kenney think that he can expand his base to consume those people? It just doesn't work. I mean, cowboys, ranchers, rig hands, blue collar people, rural people, those are the reliable conservative base. Jason Kenney has so annoyed them that they are protesting against him now. And in the instance of Chris Scott, they're willing to go to jail to protest him. I don't see how Jason Kenney hangs on to power without making peace with these people, apologizing to them. But my concern is that he's running out of runway before the next election to make it right.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.